I wish that I had a more deep and meaningful answer to this question, because a lot of my songs are inspired by a concept, and then that concept is fully fleshed out as I write it, and it gets better and better, as I chip away at the marble. With this song, I kind of found the concept halfway through, but the inspiration of it was me being really stoned on my back porch and seeing a green tree with pink flowers and going, oh, pink and green, that's nice. Pink and green. But then, in my altered state, I guess I had the wherewithal to know that like the tree was pink and probably wouldn't have quite the marketability that I needed. And so then I started playing with, okay, pink and green, this is a very evocative set of colors. What can this describe? And I landed on a dress. And that's sort of where using very specific physical language to describe a person in a moment in time, that developed later. But the inspiration was a very beautiful tree and a very copious amount of marijuana. I think that I don't know. I don't know if I believe in love at first sight. In terms of it actually being love. But I do think I believe in love at first sight. I believe in the almost crushing feeling of a fleeting romance, of meeting someone and having this incredible chemistry, but you live in different countries, or there's no chance that this is ever going to happen. A couple of girls from musical theater camp come to mind, or the choir trip to Italy or whatever. And that is love at first sight. It's not love, but it's love at first sight. All of those feelings being accelerated because you know that you have to fit an entire relationship into one night or 1 week. That's what I tried to capture with this song. I've said it before that I a lot of the times I write music about specific things, and I think using specificity really supercharges what you're writing, because it's specific. But then you are limited within the confines of your memory. When you write about something that's never happened, it can be anything. And so this dance with this person, it's based on real feelings that I've had, but it's based on completely fictional events, trying to capture that fleeting love at first sight energy. I want people to hear this song and think about love, but not necessarily love that they got. Maybe love that they had just for a second. Someone who lives far away where they know that they'll never get them, but they'll always wonder what could have been if just a few details were changed. My music journey started pretty traditionally, working with a whole team of songwriters and a different producer. And when a lot of other people work on your material, even if you wrote the entire piece, if someone else produces it, if other people have their hands on it, suddenly the question of ownership becomes quite murky. And at the beginning of my songwriting career, I was finding myself in positions where I had to buy my song back from someone because they worked on it. And so that's when I started, almost 5 years ago now, with an album called The Opposite, producing my own material. And so the process for this started with a joint and a back porch, and continued with hours and hours in my home studio by myself. You know, I don't have any collaborators on my solo project. Maybe that's because I'm a bit of a masochist. Maybe that's because I'm selfish with my stories. I don't know, but I've found that with most of my solo material in the past 5 years, I wanted to do it alone. And so the process was sitting in front of a computer for hours and hours and hours over the course of what actually ended up being many months for this particular track. Sometimes songs, you know, happen, and I love when that occurs, but other times the songs sort of have to gestate, and I kind of have to figure out where they're going, and sometimes it takes me a while to find them. Pink and Green started as, you know, much more like a Billie Eilish Phineas track, very soft, very subtle synths, pads, deep drums, and then it became this kind of big bandy horns blaring thing. It was within the very long and arduous, lonely process that I found what that was and went there. And that was the result of just sitting in front of a computer waiting for it to come to me. Whose idea were the horns? Interesting question. Yeah, that was Samantha's idea. Because I, you know, that's another piece of the process too, is constantly checking in with, you know, it's not necessarily that I want other people to help me write it or help me produce it, because I also think that I'm very much in an exploratory phase of making art where I want to learn as much as I can, and the end result doesn't really matter to me as much as the process does, which I think is why I'm so keen on being alone. But sometimes you have to get out of the space between your ears, and so I'll bounce out what I have. I'll show it to Sam. I'll show it to some of my friends, and in the sort of Phineas iteration of this song, I showed it to Samantha, and the horn section that goes dum bum 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 bum, that part was a synth. It was very different. And Sam was like, this was cool, but like I hear horns, I hear trumpets, I hear saxophones. And so I went in, I did a little fiddling, I was like, how about this? And I think that's kind of when the song started to become what it is now. I mean, there aren't really any significance. The significance of them were the beautiful colors of nature that I saw while under the influence. I find it so unbelievably funny how many people on the internet think that it has something to do with Wicked. And as much as I would love to create some sort of anthemic pop dedication to my time at Wicked, that is not what this song is. The significance of those colors aren't really anything other than they were vibrant enough in nature to stand out to me and for me to write a song about them. And I think the vibrance of those colors in this world that I've created, where it's a one-night thing, you met at a wedding and then you fly to different sides of the world and never see each other or whatever. If I saw someone in a pink and green dress, I would remember those colors, that those details that you remember in a hazy night. But it isn't so much those colors as it is color in general that I wanted to play with in this piece. You know, I don't describe myself with any sort of imagery in the entire piece. I describe her with evocative imagery the whole time. You know, the color of her dress, her face, her hands, her hair, her skin. The only time that I describe me is at the very end of the bridge when I say, my cheeks were red and her dress was pink and green. And so I was able to use the imagery of color to fuse the narrative of how I feel and who she is, but also set us apart. that her vibrant colors are what I remember about her. And the only thing I can remember about myself is my embarrassment and infatuation when we danced. At first it was about no one. Like I said, it was mostly imaginary. But I found myself needing to get more specific, because while I love her dress was pink and green and I think she's all I've ever wanted. I mean, that's such a simple statement. But you have to create a foil against simplicity. You can't rely on simplicity the whole time, and so you have to get a little bit deeper. You know, her waist like a wave that I let overtake me. Her hands, when we danced, had me running in circles. Her bare skin exposed to the air practically did me in altogether. These all-encompassing, crushing feelings. Samantha is the person who makes me feel that way. And she is who filled those blanks in for me when I had to get really specific. And the interesting thing about making music all by yourself like this is that there are limits to what a brand new producer can do. Once you are in control of all of the levers of creativity, it's very overwhelming, because suddenly your music journey becomes a diary and you need to get all of it out. And so, you know, I was writing a breakup album almost a year after a breakup happened. I was writing I Love the Single Life album almost a year after I was no longer single. There is a delay when you're in charge of everything, because it takes so long for your proficiency to catch up with where your heart and your head are at. And when I wrote Pink and Green, 3 years after falling in love with Samantha, I realized that what I was making creatively had finally caught up with my head and my heart. And that was incredibly rewarding. I think for both of us, maybe. A big part of my creative journey is finishing what I start. And I had so many pieces that I started so long ago, and it just took me so long because I wasn't proficient enough to finish them in a timely way. Once they were finally out of the way and I could write about what I wanted to, without even knowing I was writing about her, I was. To think that all of that came from a tree. It's one of my favorite things about art. Comes out of nowhere and it completely takes you by surprise. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed listening to me talk about my new song, Pink and Green. It is coming out on Friday, March 26th. Please stream it, buy it, however you want to listen to it. It's going to be available everywhere that you get your music. I can't wait to hear what you think about it. And we'll see you on the next one.